Hello and welcome to lesson 3, all about money matters. So what we're going to cover in this lesson: how much does boarding school cost? How to get help with fees, for example, bursaries. Should I consider applying for a scholarship? And what is the timeline if you're going to apply for a scholarship? Let's start then with, what does boarding school cost? Well, first of all, it's important, if you don't understand already, to understand that the UK school year covers 3 school terms. So that's the term starting in September, the term starting in January, and the term starting in April. The reason for this is that boarding schools tend to list their fees on their website as per term. Some will list them annually, but mostly they're listed full term. So the full boarding fee does vary a great deal. So it's really important when you're doing the school research to look at the school fees that are listed, but do bear in mind that there will usually be an annual fee increase from September, and this can range from nothing to 5%. So factor in that the fees may go up slightly when your child enters the school, if you are talking to a school a year or more ahead of time. Now, at time of writing, the termly boarding fees range from about £7,500 for a prep school up to £13,000 for a top senior school. So that's a total per year of approximately £22,500 up to £39,000. But as I said, please do bear in mind that these are approximations because all school fees are different, and that's why it's really important to look them up, because they will vary in time, and also there are big variations between schools. One of the reasons why there are big variations is that the termly fee can be made up of different things. So, for example, some schools may include learning support if your child needs it, or English as an additional language lessons if your child needs them. Music lessons are usually charged extra, but again, what schools charge can vary very much between schools. So in addition to looking at the termly fees, look up what's included in those fees, and also look up what the extras are that the school will charge for, because each term, depending on how many co-curricular activities or any learning support that your child may need, these extra fees can stack up. The other thing to look out for with schools is the insurances that they offer. So most schools will offer some kind of fees insurance, a private healthcare policy, dental care, and these can be optional or some can be compulsory, again, depending on the school policy. So it should be listed on the fees page of their website. If it isn't and you're not sure, then I would contact the bursary and just ask them for clarification. If you're coming from overseas, then you've also got to remember that you need to factor in the additional costs of that. For example, your flights, travel to and from the airport, and if you are going to need guardianship services, these can add significantly to the annual cost of boarding school. So make sure that you factor these into your calculations. Don't forget, uniform can be expensive, but a lot of schools will have a pre-loved or second-hand uniform shop, so that's always an option. Your child will almost certainly need a laptop, some sort of tablet, of course the mobile phone for keeping in touch with home, and then lots of things like sports equipment, rugby boots, football boots, hockey stick, lacrosse stick, things like that. Again, you need to factor these in terms of the cost. So if the fees are an important factor and part of your research, then it's really important to look at the costs of these things: music lessons, tennis coaching, learning support, weekend trips. And when you make school-to-school comparison, don't always just look at the termly fees, because on paper the termly fees may be a bit higher, but they may include more weekend trips, more learning support, more extra lessons within their boarding fees than another school which may have cheaper termly fees but more additional add-on costs. Also remember that some schools may offer reduced boarding fees if your child flexi or weekly boards. So if you want your child to have a boarding experience, but your budget is quite tight and you don't live too far from the school, then these can be really good options to give your child the independence and the experience of boarding while keeping the termly fee cost a little bit lower. So we're going to be talking later about your long list comparison checklists for your schools, and there is a section on that to write notes about finances if finances are something that's really important to you when it comes to your boarding school selection. So there will be more on that later. So let's move on to thinking a little bit about bursaries. So boarding schools are really very happy to receive applications from bright or exceptional children who they feel would benefit from the education they offer, but whose parents couldn't necessarily pay the full fees. Really, the advice on this is, if this describes your child, call the school and ask. Bursaries can be up to about 100% of fees, depending on need. And it's really important to tell the school at time of inquiry if you want to be considered for a bursary, because bursaries work on an annual budget that is set by the governors annually, and hence this budget can get allocated quite quickly. So it's really important to make sure that you communicate with the schools if a bursary is something that you would be looking for. Means testing for bursaries is quite a detailed process, and it looks at both family income and assets. And sometimes they will come and visit you in your home and talk to the whole family. So it is important that if you need a bursary, that you talk to the school about it and get in contact with the school bursar, who will be very happy to help you and explain how their means testing process for bursaries works. The other option, if you're looking for assistance with funding, is to research charitable trusts, particularly if you work in a particular industry or field where there may be a charitable trust where support can be granted for help with school fees. So it's always worth doing some research into these just to see if you are eligible for any funding from a charitable trust. So now on to scholarships, and this is quite a difficult subject for parents to address. And so I'm just going to talk you through a little bit in terms of an introduction to scholarships. So the first thing to really understand about scholarships is that they are for children who have an exceptional academic track record. But it's not just about their academic track record, it's about their potential. Increasingly, schools are using non-verbal reasoning, verbal reasoning, online testing to look at children's potential. So potential will be about looking what type of school has your child been in to date, how well have they been doing within that environment, and hence do they have more potential than they've been showing, or have they already been performing at an exceptionally high level. If you're going to be looking at scholarships in another area, they do need to be truly exceptional in more than one area. So if, for example, you're looking for a music scholarship, ideally they need to sing and play a musical instrument, or play two musical instruments to a very high level. Again, with sport, they need to have performed in sport at a very high level, or ideally more than one sport. If they want a scholarship in the arts, design, they need to have a portfolio that shows that they are working at a very high level for their age in those subjects. The other form of scholarship is called an all-rounder scholarship. And that really is for the sort of child who's quick to volunteer, gets on well with others, really looks to be a very active part of the community in which they are involved. In tandem with that, they will have a pretty good academic track record. They may well also be good at music, good at sport, good across the board. That's what the all-rounder scholarship, not necessarily exceptional in any one area, but talented and making a firm commitment and contribution across a variety of areas. So the difference between scholarships and bursaries really is that the scholarship benefit is now less financial in nature. It could be sort of 5 to 20% of annual fees. Again, very different per school. So it's really important that you ask at time of inquiry to the school what percentages of fees are connected to their scholarship. Really, those scholarships now are more honorary. So they're aimed at nurturing a child's talent. So, for example, they may get free music lessons or access to a talented athlete training program if they're sporty. So scholarships really now are less about the finances and more about exceptional children and ensuring they achieve the highest level of which they're capable. So as a parent, when you're considering, should I apply for a scholarship? Well, how do you answer that question? It can be really hard to assess your own child realistically, especially as you might not really know how their abilities compare with similar children of their age. So really, it's important to listen to the feedback that you're being given by teachers when you go to the parents' evening, that you review their assessment scores, their reports, and if there are any comparisons with peers, are they performing consistently towards the top of their set or their stream? Because scholarships really are aimed at children who are performing at an exceptional level. Prep school heads or international school heads are very good at advising on scholarships. And so really the best advice I could give you would be to go and talk to your current head, talk to your current teachers, tutors. If you're already in a boarding school, so perhaps you're moving prep school on to boarding senior school, then talk to your housemaster or housemistress and listen to what they have to say, because they will have your child's best interests at heart. And believe me, if they're capable of getting a scholarship, they will really want you to apply, because it's a pat on the back for them too. But likewise, if they don't think your child is capable of attaining a scholarship, they will advise you against applying so that you're not putting your child through unnecessary stress where there is potential that they may fail, particularly if you're applying to several schools at once. The other advice that I can give you in terms of scholarship is that if this is something that you're aiming for in the future, so for example, your child is perhaps 7 or 8 now going into a prep school and you would like to apply for a scholarship at 13 to their senior boarding school, then nurture their talents from a young age if you have this time to plan. So if they are showing talents in singing or even just a passion and are inspired or an interest in something, really encourage and nurture them to excel and practice and do well in the areas where they're talented, because that will give you the optimum opportunity to apply for a scholarship in the future. Also bear in mind that admissions paperwork and testing days are different from scholarship applications. So it's really important, if you are planning on applying for a scholarship, similarly to a bursary, that you tell the school that this is what you would like to be considered for right from the start, so that you don't miss crucial deadlines. So how do you apply for a scholarship? So the first thing would be to, as I've mentioned, talk to your current school about areas where your child might be strong enough. So for example, might it be music? Might it be sport? Might it be design and technology or art? Or indeed, maybe they're a suitable candidate for an all-rounder scholarship because of their contribution to their current school across the board. Listen to what they have to say, because they know your child very well. If you have time, then it's really important to prepare. In an ideal world, 2 years is a good length of time for preparation. And the reason I say this is because if your child is applying for a scholarship and they are going to go to, say, a senior school for a scholarship for entry at 13 plus into year 9, what that school will be looking for is passion in that child that is their own and not yours. So any preparation that is put in needs to be put in over time so that your child's confidence can grow and that they can answer interview questions by thinking for themselves, but also when they talk about their music or their singing or their sport or their art, they are really showing that they are enthusiastic about that subject and they have a passion and interest in it, not their parents. So scholarship assessment days, or in some cases for sixth form it can be whole weekends, will involve a mixture of academic tests as well as an opportunity to demonstrate their talent. So it might be that they take a portfolio of work with them, or they may be reading a monologue if it's for drama, or they would have the opportunity to play their sport, play their instrument, as well as having an interview. So this is why I'm talking about preparing your child. Understand the process and what your child is going to experience on the scholarship day, and then over time get them used to those experiences so that they feel comfortable and confident to be at their best when they get there. So there it is again, passion, but it's got to be their passion, not yours. Confidence is really important too in a child who is going for an assessment or an interview for a scholarship. So really be realistic about the pressure that you are putting onto your child. Yes, challenge is really good and it's important for children to be the best they can be, but be realistic that you aren't pushing them beyond their potential capabilities. The other thing you might like to consider if you're keen on a scholarship is to approach slightly smaller schools or slightly less academically selective schools, because often if your child is a big fish in a little pond, so is talented within a much smaller school, the opportunities for them to shine and show their talents may well be greater than in a more competitive, more selective school. So again, if a scholarship is really important, think about the types of school that you're going to approach and what type of school will give your child the best confidence and enthusiasm to be able to perform at their optimum level. Also, think carefully about the number of schools you're going to apply to. So how many assessment days is feasible for one child? Again, there it is again. I may be over-egging this point, but it is really important. Your child needs confidence to be able to talk at interview with passion about their talent and their area and to answer questions without coming across as being too prepared or too pushed into something that really isn't their passion at all. So let's just run through a quick summary of what to do next, having run through all the money matters that we've followed in this lesson so far. The first thing might be to discuss whether you would like to be considered for a bursary. So will you need assistance with funding? The second thing would be to talk to your current head or tutor or other relevant teachers within your current school about whether applying for scholarships is realistic, and if so, in what areas. Next, have a think about your child's confidence and their ability to prepare for the assessment day or weekend and what they're going to have to do on that day in terms of performing in a particular talented area or taking a portfolio, or indeed interviewed, and have a think about what you can do to help them to prepare, whether that's some sessions with a mentor or an education consultant who can do some practice interview work with them. Whatever you think they might need to give them the confidence to approach the scholarship assessment day with the enthusiasm and the passion that they're going to need to be successful. So if you are going to be applying for a subject such as art or design and technology, then it would be sensible to start working on a portfolio of work that they could take with them, practicing some music pieces that they might be performing on the day, attending extra training or trials in their sport to try and achieve a much higher level of competition so that they can demonstrate their abilities in sport. All these things will help your child to prepare for their scholarship assessment day. As already mentioned, there is an academic element to the scholarship assessment day, so doing some past papers and perhaps arranging some extra tutoring. There's going to be more on testing later on in the course, so don't worry about that too much now, but it's just something to add to your to-do list and bear in mind for future. And then the last thing really is make sure you get the dates in your diary. Check the scholarship dates, interview dates, and make sure that you know what deadlines you're working towards. If there's a deadline to be considered for a bursary, make sure you get your application form in on time. Just adding these dates to your diary means that you can relax and know that you're not going to miss any important dates. So that's it for now, and I will see you in the next video.